Look what I got. This week we are playing around with Russian piping tips again because you guys are going crazy for the last two videos. My name is Lori and you're watching The Icing Artist. This week we're attempting the Russian pointed piping tips. The kit that I found online came with 7 different piping tips, a coupler, and a little piping bag. Now from what I understand, these tips work best on cupcakes and give you a really frilly icing look. Compared to the Russian flower tips, which just pipe a beautiful flower, and the Russian ball tips, which just kind of give a really fun cupcake icing look. All of the tips look pretty similar, much like all of the other Russian piping tips we've done, except I'm guessing the skinnier the opening on the piping tip, the more ruffly and the thinner the ruffle's gonna be. No idea what this one's for. I colored all of my icing and then just filled my piping bags. And of course, if you guys want my icing recipe, as always, I will leave it right here. Just click the eye. First tip that I'm gonna try is the one with the straight line that has like a little hook on the end. I really want to see what these tips are made of, so I'm going to try piping them 2 different ways. The first way, laying it down like horizontal, where like a natural ruffle would be, and the second way, piping it vertical and letting it ruffle back and forth. That's crazy! That makes like the perfect little pretty ruffle. Like, where have these tips been my whole life every time I try to make a ruffle cake? Now to ice that cupcake, I just held that piping tip in one spot and kind of twisted the cupcake, and the piping tip did all of the work for me. It just kind of ruffled back and forth. Now, when I got to the point that I couldn't twist my hand anymore and I had to reposition, I just kind of lined up the second layer of the ruffle and it layered right into it and you couldn't really see a seam. And then I just did a second layer of ruffles right on top. This is looking like a perfect little princess cupcake. It's almost like a pretty little tutu. So that is exactly what I'm gonna make it. I just printed out and cut out a little paper bell and taped that onto a cake pop stick. That is like adorably flawless. I really like that little extra ruffle at the end where you can see the hook was. Super cute. All right, the next tip we're gonna do looks almost like a little Christmas tree. It gives much more of like a jagged ruffle look, but I still think it looks really cool. This would work perfect for like the trim of a birthday cake. And for the cupcake, I used a similar technique, except this time I had to help it a little bit and give it like a little bit of wiggle back and forth using my hand. And that made a really nice like jagged ruffle. Now I'm aware that this one looks nothing like Aurora's skirt, but it's pink and that's good enough for me, so we're going with Sleeping Beauty. The third tip looks almost like a short arrow. Piping it straight doesn't do too much, it's kind of boring, but I kind of moved my hand back and forth and it did give a really pretty ruffled look. So I'm finding sometimes the tip does all the work for you, you don't have to do anything, and other ones you just kind of have to help it out by waving your hand back and forth. This one would also work really cool for like a simple but cute cake trim. However, I don't really feel like it's gonna work that well with the cupcake. I kind of ruffled it in the same way going around the cupcake and layered that up. And it could just be because it's green icing, but does it not look kind of like lettuce? I'm gonna save it by putting some little white pearls into the center of it. Kind of looks like a flower. Like I feel like if it was like a pink or yellow, it'd look more like a flower. Moving on to the next one, which looks really similar to the last tip, except this one's more like a long arrow. I'm curious to see the difference. The length of the arrow made a huge difference. This one is like a gorgeous little ruffle, whereas the other one's like this short stumpy thing. It ruffles beautifully on the cupcake. Man, I gotta say, this is definitely my favorite tip so far. It is gorgeous. This would have worked perfect for all of my dress cakes, especially that big rainbow dress that I made when it ruffled all over the dress. That would have been perfect for that. And obviously I have turned this one into Cinderella. Guys, we're about to hit 2 million subscribers, so if you haven't subscribed, hit that subscribe button down below and hit that little notification bell so you see my videos. Next up is the skinny wave. Super ruffly. This one kind of like bounces the ruffles back and forth from side to side. That looks really cool. On the cupcake, that gives far more ruffles than any of the other piping tips we did. So if you're looking for a really, really ruffly tip, this one seems pretty good. Definitely the most like a little ballerina skirt. But instead of a ballerina, I'm going with Snow White. Almost like when she's twirling and the dress is just flowing out from underneath her. The next tip is kind of similar to the skinny one, except it's like a fat wave. And that's exactly what it looks like. It looks like a fatter version of the skinny wave. It gives really, really thick like waves going around the cupcake, which looks really cool. This one, I'm gonna give it 3 layers, and on the top layer, I'm gonna use a darker shade of green. I love the height with like the 3 layers. It looks like a really full skirt. Perfect for Princess and the Frog. The last tip, I'm not even sure why it's in this mix because it doesn't look like a ruffle. It's more like a crown or a claw. Piping straight doesn't really work. Moving the bag back and forth kind of works, but when I tried that technique on the cupcake, no, that just looks ridiculous. Waving it side to side, I feel like helps a little bit, like, but not really. I don't like this tip. I don't know what anybody uses it for, but I have to agree at the least, it's useless. These cupcakes look like a mess. Back to my favorite tip, the one I used for Cinderella. That one was gorgeous. I really want to see how it does for icing like a full dress cake. So I baked a little mini dress and we're going to ruffle that all the way around. Kind of similar to the technique I used for my big rainbow dress cake. For that one, I used my rose petal tip, which you really have to work at waving it. This tip does all of the work for you. I really love it. I would say the kit's worth it just for this one tip. Long arrow tip for the win. If you guys want to see the other Russian piping tips I attempted to use, I will leave a link right here. Just click the eye. But I want to know which tip was your guys' favorite. And if you want to see more videos like this, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and come back here again next week so we can make something else in a cake. Bye guys.